For just $6, he saved 3 alien women and built a family among the stars. The ring city of Glass Crown looked safe from a distance. Clean halls, quiet air, lights like stars frozen in metal, but safety on Glass Crown was a costume. Under it, rules pressed on people until they forgot how to breathe. Aaron Hale did not forget. He stood at the edge of the lower arcade with a folded form in his coat and his daughter's small hand in his grip. He wore a plain dock jacket, same as everyone, but his eyes moved like a rescue man still scanning a flood. He was 35, broad-shouldered, steady, and tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Mina, 6 years old, peered up through her messy bangs. "Dad," she whispered, "my daughter needs a mother." She always said it like that. He never corrected her. Not once. Above them, transit pods slid by in silent lines. The walls hummed. The floor felt like glass under thousands of careful feet. He faced a kiosk pulsing with blue contracts. Faces and fees rolled by. "Surrendered residents," the panel said. "Debt failure, reassignment." A clerk in a thin gray coat waited behind the screen. He wore a clipped smile that matched his hair. "Next, name and purpose. Aaron Hale," he said. "Kinship filing," the clerk blinked. "You mean labor transfer?" "Kinship," Aaron repeated. Calm, low, decided. The clerk smirked the lazy smirk of someone who thinks the rules will do their fighting for them. "Sir, these are delinquents. The legal path is reassignment only. You can't file marriages with Clause 7K, Aaron said. Post-evacuation welfare rewrite. Family expansion to prevent state harm." The smirk cracked. Fingers tapped. The clerk glanced at the text scrolling on his side of the glass. People in line leaned in to listen. Mina hid behind Aaron's coat and watched with wide eyes. 3 profiles lit the kiosk. Sarah of Vey, sea gray skin, white braid. Former performer, 25, license revoked, Cade Tharn, bronze tone. Dockloader, 28, shoulder injury. Claim denied, Erie Lumen, pale lilac. Textile finisher, 27, chemical stains visible on her hands, no makeup. No smiles, their posture said one thing, still standing. Mina tugged his sleeve. "Are they sad?" "They're tired," Aaron said. "Tired isn't the same as broken." He looked at the fees. 6 credits each. "On this ring, Mercy was cheaper than lunch. I'll file for all 3, he said. The clerk almost laughed. "All 3? This is not a market for—" Aaron set a polymer envelope on the counter. "Old world bills, creased, real. Convert it," he said. "Dollars or credits?" "I don't care. The code allows this, the law won. It always did when someone actually read it." Stamps hit paper. Receipts slid out. A back door hissed open and the women walked through together. Sarah first, small and alert. Cade with her chin up, jaw set for a fight. Erie last, quiet as a shadow, eyes sharp. "Assets released," the clerk said with a bored wave. Aaron turned from him to the women. "I didn't buy you," he said. "I filed bonds. You can walk away now. If you come with us, there is a room. Food. Locks that open from the inside." "Respect is the only rule." Sarah looked confused. Cade looked suspicious. Erie's gaze flicked to Mina, then to Aaron's hands. No reach, no demand. Only the tremor he held tight behind his ribs. Mina stepped out, clutching her stuffed gull. "Do you want to come home?" she asked. Something fragile moved across Sarah's face. "Home," she repeated softly, tasting the word like a first bite of real bread. They went. The corridor outside the market was narrow and dim. Glass Crown buzzed like an insect. Doors slid. Cameras watched. Aaron led them to a worker's unit halfway up the inner rim. It held a small table, a sink, a narrow bed, a folding cot, a window that stared down at blue storm clouds far below. It was clean. It was poor. "It was theirs. It's not much," he said. "But it's safe." Sarah tested the counter with her palm as if waiting for dirt. There was none. Cade checked the vents, the hinges, the frame. Irie stood in the window's dull light and watched the room take its first breath. Aaron set a pan on the coil. Oil hissed. Reef meat crisped and curled. The smell filled corners that had known only dust and recycled air. "You cook," Sarah said like a question. "When the water rose, I cooked for whoever was left," he said. "Bad food is still food." Cade's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "We'll judge later." They ate on cheap plates. No one talked much. The silence wasn't empty. It was careful. "The city will look at this," Erie said finally. "They will call it a trick." "They can call it a sunrise if they want," Aaron said. "Clause 7K cares about one thing, stability. We'll be that. Cade set down her fork. You know they'll test you. They can try, he said. His voice stayed even. I'm not afraid of clipboards. Mina climbed onto the bed and leaned against Sarah's shoulder like she had always belonged there. Sarah went still, then relaxed by degrees. She trusts too easily, Sarah whispered. No, Aaron said. She trusts correctly. A chime rang. The wall panel flashed red. Housing compliance review in 48 hours. No one moved. The ring hummed around them. Aaron stepped closer to the notice, read each word, then clicked it away. They'll ask if we're real, he said. Cade cracked her knuckles. And we answer how? Together, he said. He pulled a thin blanket across the cot. He fixed a loose vent screw. He sealed a drip with tape and stubborn hands. Sarah washed dishes like they were fragile glass. Erie stitched a tear in the curtain with quiet, neat loops. Cade set her back against the door and watched the hallway with a guard's eyes. Night came like a slow breath. The ring dimmed to indigo. The ocean below held up the city like a mirror made of moving light. Aaron stood at the window and saw 5 reflections crowd the glass. A man, a child, 3 strangers who were not strangers anymore. You're not afraid of what they'll say? Sarah asked, voice low. I've buried enough to be done with fear, he said. He did not add the rest. That a grave on a drowned coast had set this day in motion. That a 6-year-old's grammar had cut him open. That a law no one used could still save lives if someone dared to touch it. He only said, sleep. Tomorrow we prove what we already are. Mina's breathing went soft. Cade finally left the door. Irie folded the last scrap of cloth and set it square. Sarah lay down with her braid over her shoulder and one hand open, just in case a small hand needed it in the dark. Aaron watched the glass until it showed him nothing but his own steadiness. Let them come, he thought. Let them see. Morning light spread weakly through the window of Aaron's small apartment, brushing across metal walls that had never known warmth. The clock on the console blinked 36 hours to inspection. The words glowed red like a warning carved into the air. Aaron stood at the counter, brewing the bitter seed coffee that passed for breakfast on glass crown. He wasn't thinking about the taste. He was thinking about how a system could decide who deserved a home. The air smelled of salt and faint detergent. Behind him, quiet movements began to fill the room. Sarah stood at the sink, washing a plate with slow, careful motions, like she expected someone to tell her to stop. Cade crouched near the vent, tightening a screw with a dock tool she'd smuggled from her old job. Irie was folding scraps of fabric near the window, turning them into curtains that caught what little light made it through the glass. Mina sat on the floor, her small legs crossed, humming softly as she drew circles on the condensation. It wasn't comfort yet. It was order, the kind of order people build when they've run out of places to hide. Coffee's ready, Aaron said quietly. He handed a cup to Sarah first. Her hands trembled slightly when she took it. You didn't tell us, she said. What are these inspections really like? Aaron leaned against the counter. 2 officials. One talks, one watches. They check everything. Our words, our body language, even how much food is on the table. They'll try to decide if this family is real. Cade frowned. And if they think it's fake? Then they'll separate us, Aaron said plainly. You'll be reassigned. I'll lose the room. Mina goes to the social line. The words hit like cold air. The silence after them was sharp enough to cut. Mina looked up from her drawing, her voice barely a whisper. They'll take me away? Aaron crouched down to her level. No, they won't. Not if we show them the truth. But we just met, she said, confused. He smiled faintly. Families aren't made by time. They're made by choice. The room went still. Sarah turned her head, blinking away something she didn't want anyone to see. Erie's hands paused over the cloth. Cade looked away, pretending to check the vent again. Aaron straightened. We've got a day and a half. That's enough. We clean, we prepare, and tomorrow we practice. We make this place feel like what it already is. Cade smirked faintly. Rehearse being normal? Exactly, he said. Except we don't pretend. They began without another word. Sarah scrubbed the counter until it gleamed like metal water. Irie hung her violet curtains soft against the steel. Cade checked the locks twice, then patched the leak under the sink. Mina followed them from task to task, handing tools, humming, talking to her stuffed gull. The rhythm was awkward, but it was real. For the first time since they'd arrived, the room sounded alive. By midday, the air smelled of soap, heat, and effort. Aaron sat on the edge of the bed, watching the others move like they'd done this 100 times. Maybe in their own ways they had, each surviving in systems that called them units instead of people. Sarah brought him a small plate of reef bread. "Eat something," she said. "You've been staring for an hour." He took it, nodded his thanks. "You're good at giving orders." "I learned from men who thought they were leaders," she said. "Turns out they just shouted louder." That made him smile, a small thing but genuine. "You'll do fine tomorrow." She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward Mina, who was helping Irie pin a curtain. "She believes in this," Sarah whispered. "More than any of us." "That's why it'll work," Aaron said. Evening came. The city dimmed to blue. They sat together for a quiet meal, simple, warm, and silent. No one needed to talk about the inspection now. The plan was clear. The test wasn't about paperwork. It was about heart. After dinner, Cade leaned on the doorframe, arms crossed. "You really think the city will believe this? A human and 3 aliens under one roof?" "They don't have to believe it," Aaron said. "They just have to see it," she snorted. "You talk like a man who's fought a war." He looked up. "Not a war, just the water." That answer made her pause. For once, she didn't argue. Later, when Mina fell asleep on the cot, the others cleaned quietly. Irie folded the last towel. Sarah turned off the cooker. Cade checked the vent one more time and finally relaxed. Aaron stood at the window again. The storm bands below shifted like ghosts under glass. He could see his reflection blurred with the shapes of 4 others behind him, mismatched, uncertain, but together. Sarah approached. Her voice was soft. "You could still step back, you know. Cancel the filings. Say it was a mistake." "It wasn't," he said. "They'll judge you." "They already do." Her lips curved into something between a frown and a smile. "You're strange, Aaron Hale. Just human," he said. "And I think that's still allowed." The silence that followed wasn't cold anymore. It was the kind that meant something was beginning to take root. A fragile, impossible kind of hope. He looked around the room one last time before sleep. The patched vent, the violet curtains, the folded blanket where Mina slept, the 3 women who had nowhere else to go and somehow ended up here. This wasn't comfort, not yet. It was defiance disguised as family, and on Glass Crown that was dangerous enough to change everything. Morning on Glass Crown didn't begin with sunrise. It began with sound. The slow hum of ventilation pipes, the faint hiss of power coils, the rhythm of a city pretending to be alive. Inside Iran's small apartment, that hum felt louder today. It was inspection day. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his gray jacket. His reflection looked calm, but calm was just another skill he'd learned back when the floods came. You stayed still, even when everything under you was breaking. Behind him, the room was a small storm of quiet motion. Sarah was brushing Mina's hair, her movements careful, almost reverent. The child's dark curls gleamed under the light. "Do I look proper?" Mina asked, twisting around to see her reflection. Sarah smiled softly. "You look like hope." Across the room, Cade checked the vents again, tightening the same screw for the 3rd time. "They'll notice details," she muttered. "A loose panel means a careless home." "They'll notice more than that," Irie said from the counter. She was slicing bread, arranging it beside a small pot of reheated stew. Her precision made the meal look like something worth respecting. Aaron nodded. "You're right. They notice everything. How we stand, how we talk, what's missing." Mina glanced up. "What if they don't like us?" He knelt beside her. "Then we show them what they're missing." At exactly 09 Yizar, a chime echoed through the room. 3 short tones and 1 long. "The official code for inspection entry." Every breath stopped. Aaron pressed his palm to the panel. The door slid open. 2 inspectors stepped in, a woman and a man, both wearing sharp gray coats marked with the spiral insignia of the civil authority. The woman carried a tablet. The man held a small recorder. Their faces were neutral, professional, unreadable. "Register Hale," the woman said flatly. "We're here for your compliance review." "Code 3F, do you understand the terms?" "Yes," Aaron said, standing straight. "Full access. No restrictions." She gave a curt nod and began scanning the room. Her gaze swept over Sarah, Cade, and Irie like a scanner through glass. "These are the individuals listed on your filing?" He gestured calmly. "Sarah of Vey, Cade Tharn, Eerie Lumen, and my daughter, Mina. The inspector scrolled through her tablet. You filed for 3 kinship bonds in 1 cycle. That's highly irregular. It's legal, Aaron said. Clause 7K. Family expansion under post-evacuation welfare revisions. The woman's brow lifted. Most men use that clause for relatives, not rescued aliens. Most men don't read the fine print, he replied. The male inspector typed notes quietly, his eyes moving between Aaron and the women. Sarah shifted slightly, her hands clasped in front of her. Cade stayed still but alert, like a soldier waiting for an ambush. Eerie stood by the counter, calm, her pale skin catching the blue light from the window. The lead inspector turned to Sarah first. Describe your role in this household. Sarah met her gaze with quiet steadiness. I cook, I clean. I make sure the child eats and smiles. But that's not what makes it a home. What makes it real is that when I wake up, someone says good morning like it means something. The inspector hesitated, just a second, before writing that down. She turned to Cade. You were a dock loader. Why file as a bonded partner instead of accepting reassignment? Cade's mouth curved into a sharp, humorless smile. Because this man didn't look at me like I was broken cargo. He looked at me like a person who still mattered. That was enough. Even the male inspector looked up at that. Then came Irie's turn. The woman didn't ask her anything. She simply waited. Eerie spoke anyway. People think we came here for shelter. They're wrong. We came here for choice. This city forgot what that feels like. He reminded us. Aaron didn't move. His throat felt tight, but his voice stayed level. I didn't save anyone, he said. They were already strong. I just gave them a door that opened both ways. The inspector tapped the tablet. You realize this entire arrangement challenges the city's cultural structure. Then maybe the structure's the problem, Aaron said evenly. She frowned. And the child? Has she been instructed on what to say? Before he could speak, Mina raised her hand shyly. Nobody told me what to say, she said. But I can tell you what I feel. The inspector blinked, then nodded for her to go on. They don't yell, Mina said simply. They don't hurt me. We eat together. They help me brush my hair. That's what families do. A pause. Even the recorder seemed to stop humming. Sarah's eyes shimmered. Cade turned away, pretending to study the wall. Irie smiled faintly at the floor. The inspector cleared her throat. That's noted. They moved through the room, inspecting every corner, every seam, every drawer. Eerie explained the curtains. Cade showed the fixed vent. Sarah offered them coffee without trembling hands. It wasn't acting anymore. It was life. When they reached the framed certificate on the wall, the one from Aaron's rescue medic days, the male inspector stopped. You served in the flood corps, he said. Yes, Aaron answered. Before Glass Crown was built. And your wife? She died. The water took her. I made her a promise. I kept it. The female inspector's expression softened almost imperceptibly. What promise? He looked at Mina. That our daughter wouldn't grow up alone. For a heartbeat, the silence was full of something the city didn't understand. Grace. The inspector closed her tablet. That will be all, Register Hale. You'll receive the verdict within 48 hours. She turned toward the door. For what it's worth, she added quietly, this doesn't feel like a performance. When the door closed behind them, no one spoke. Then Mina exhaled loudly and whispered, Did we win? Aaron smiled faintly, exhaustion softening his face. We didn't lose, he said. Sarah let out a shaky laugh. That's good enough for me. Cade dropped into a chair. They inspected even the air. I swear they measured how long we breathed. Irie poured the last of the coffee into cups. And still, we stood. Aaron looked around at the room, at the repaired vent, the new curtains, the child's drawings on the wall. For the first time since he'd moved to Glass Crown, it felt like something alive. Whatever they decide, he said quietly. They'll never be able to unsee this. Outside, the endless ocean shifted beneath the city's ring of light. Inside, for the first time, 5 people shared something no law could regulate: belonging. The inspection had ended, but peace did not return. It never did on Glass Crown. Silence here wasn't comfort. It was the sound of judgment being written somewhere behind a screen. 2 days passed. No message, no visit, no verdict. Only the blinking words on the wall console: review pending. Aaron woke before dawn every day, restless. He'd pace the narrow apartment like a man trapped between two storms, the one inside his chest and the one waiting at his door. Sarah started rising early too. She'd brew coffee before anyone stirred, her bare feet quiet on the metal floor. Sometimes she'd just stand by the window, staring at the glow of the lower city, whispering to herself words too soft to hear. Cade stayed busy, always fixing something that didn't need fixing. She resealed the vent. She tightened screws until her hands hurt. Work was how she breathed. Yet every time a sound echoed from the hallway, her shoulders stiffened. Irie tried to hide her worry. She'd fold towels that were already folded, line up cups in perfect rows, recheck the curtain seams. Her calmness looked solid, but it cracked in small ways, the way her fingers trembled when she thought no one was watching. And Mina, she grew quieter. She still laughed sometimes, still helped set the table, but her voice was soft now. Careful, like she thought too much noise might break something fragile. By the third evening, the air inside the room felt too heavy to breathe. Aaron finally decided he couldn't wait anymore. "I'm going to the registrar office," he said, pulling on his coat. Sarah looked up from the counter. "To do what?" "To remind them we exist," he said. Cade frowned. "That could draw attention," he nodded. "It's already on us. I've learned what happens when people wait quietly for fairness. It never comes." No one argued after that. The corridor outside was bright, sterile, and empty. Every step echoed. The lights overhead pulsed in cold rhythm. Cameras tracked him as he walked. On Glass Crown, everything watched and nothing cared. When he reached the registrar office, the same clerk from before was there, the man who'd laughed at him when he filed the first petition. The man looked up, surprised, then sneered. "You again," he said. "Come to see if your little charity project survived review?" Aaron kept his voice calm. "Came to ask why the review's overdue." "Reviews take longer when there are violations," the clerk said, pretending to scroll through his screen. "You filed for 3 bonds. That's unconventional. Violations under what clause?" Aaron asked. The clerk smirked. "Morality, maybe. They're probably waiting to see if your alien brides start fighting each other." Aaron leaned forward, resting his hands on the counter, not in anger, but with the quiet weight of someone who'd faced collapsing buildings and still kept talking. "You know the law," he said. "Clause 7K defines stability, not count. You stamp that code every day. Unless you rewrote it yourself, stop pretending it's about morals." The clerk froze. The tone in Aaron's voice carried authority, the kind that came from command, not threat. The man swallowed hard. "I'll send a status request," he muttered. "Mark it urgent," Aaron said, and turned to leave. When he came home, the smell of cooking met him at the door, a small mercy. Irie was stirring something in the pan. "You look like you argued with a wall," she said without turning. "Close enough," he replied, hanging his coat. "They say it's delayed." "I think they're testing us." Sarah set down her cup. "Testing how?" "If we break while waiting." Cade snorted, crossing her arms. "Then we don't." Dinner that night was quiet but steady. 5 plates, 1 table. The stew was salty, the bread overbaked, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the ritual: food, silence, the sound of being together. Mina spoke first. "Dad," she asked softly, "when they come back, will they take us away?" He looked around the table before answering, his voice calm and sure. "No, because no one here belongs to them." Sarah smiled faintly, something warm flickering in her eyes. "You talk like a man who fought wars." He shook his head. "Only systems." Later, after everyone had gone to bed, he stood by the window again. Outside, the city shone like glass and lies. Inside, the room glowed with the soft pulse of sleep. Sarah and Mina on the cot, Irie curled near the window, Cade on the floor beside the vent, still half awake. For a long time, Aaron said nothing. He only watched them, the proof of something bigger than any law. Then the console chimed. A sharp red light flashed. Notification, public review assembly. Attendance required. Time, 48 hours. He read the words twice, then a third time. It was worse than he expected. This wasn't another inspection, it was a hearing. A public judgment. Recorded. Broadcast to the civil network. He exhaled slowly through his nose, feeling the air leave his chest like pressure venting from a sealed chamber. When Sarah stirred awake and whispered, "What is it?" He didn't lie. "They're not done with us," he said quietly. "They want to make an example." Her eyes met his in the half-dark. Then we make it worth watching. He nodded once, the faintest curve of a smile on his tired face. Exactly. Outside, the ocean turned silver beneath the city lights, endless and cold. Inside, 5 hearts beat steady in defiance. Whatever the assembly planned to prove, they'd find out what humans did best: stand their ground. The summons came with the morning cycle, 2 soft beeps on the console, followed by a calm, merciless voice. Household hail. Attendance required at Civic Assembly. Sector 4, public review. 48 hours. The message faded, but the silence it left behind did not. Sarah read it twice, then looked up from the screen. Her face was pale but steady. Public means recorded, she said quietly. Aaron nodded. They want to make a lesson out of us. Cade tied back her hair, her voice sharp. Then we make the right lesson stick. Eerie glanced at the child, still rubbing sleep from her eyes. What will they ask? Everything, Aaron said. Why we did this. What it means. Whether it's real. He turned toward Mina, who was staring down at her plate, her small fingers tracing a circle in the crumbs. You don't have to talk, he told her gently. But she lifted her chin, eyes bright. I want to. That single sentence made everyone fall silent. Sarah reached out and brushed Mina's hair from her face. Then you speak truth, she said. That's all we need. The next 2 days were a blur of quiet preparation. The apartment became a hive of movement. Sarah washed every surface until it shone. Eerie rewove the curtain seams. Cade checked the locks and repaired the faulty door hinge that had stuck since the floods. Aaron ironed his jacket, an old habit from service days, more ritual than need. None of them said it aloud, but they all knew. This wasn't just about approval. It was survival. On the morning of the hearing, the air in the apartment felt heavier, dense with nerves and hope. The sky below the city's glass rim shimmered a dull turquoise, reflecting up through the lower ring's transparent floor. Aaron fastened his jacket collar, his hand steady even as his pulse raced. Behind him, the others were finishing their own quiet preparations. Sarah tightened her white braid and adjusted the wrap around her shoulders. Cade cleaned the grease from her hands and tied her hair with a strip of gray cloth. Eerie carried the folded petitions Aaron had signed, keeping them neat, ordered, proof that everything was done within law. Mina wore her best, an oversized mint-green sweater that nearly covered her knees. She held her stuffed gull under one arm. Sarah smiled faintly at her. You look brave, Mina nodded. You too. They left together. The transit pod hummed as it carried them upward through the ring corridors. People stared. Some whispered. Aaron felt their eyes but didn't slow. The pod's transparent walls reflected their small group. 1 man, 1 child, 3 women of alien descent. A sight that didn't fit the city's idea of normal. When they arrived, the Civic Assembly Tower loomed like a blade of light. Inside, the chamber was circular and vast, filled with gray uniforms and curious faces. Rows of spectators lined the upper balconies. Cameras hovered, recording every angle. A voice echoed from the dais. Register Aaron Hale, step forward. He did, calm and upright. The women followed, forming a line beside him. Mina stood between Sarah and Cade, her small hand clasping theirs. The lead magistrate, an older man with silver hair and eyes like steel, adjusted his mic. You have been summoned under Review Code 7K for multiple kinship filings. 3 bonds, 1 cycle, explain. Aaron's voice carried steady through the chamber. Because I was standing in a room where 3 women were about to be stripped of their names and sent back to labor. Because the law said I could offer family instead. And because my daughter asked me why no one was helping them. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The magistrate's brow furrowed. You understand that your action undermines traditional civil order. Aaron met his gaze. Civil order isn't worth much if it forgets to be humane. The silence that followed was long, broken only by the faint hum of recorders. Then the magistrate turned to Sarah. State your name and role in this household. Sarah of Vey, she said. I help keep it running. I cook, I clean, I care for the child. But more than that, I'm seen here. That's something I hadn't felt in years. Next, Cade stepped forward, her shoulders squared. Cade Tharn, former dock worker. I was discarded after an injury.
He didn't buy me.
He offered choice. That's rare enough to fight for. The magistrate turned to Eerie. And you? Irie Lumen, she said, voice calm but firm. Textile finisher. When my license was revoked, I became a number. Here, I'm a person again. That's all we want. The man hesitated, then faced Mina. Child, were you told what to say? Before Aaron could speak, Mina answered, her small voice carrying across the chamber. No one told me, but I can tell you what I feel. The audience leaned closer. Even the recorders seemed to hover still. They make food that smells good, she said softly. They brush my hair. They laugh. We sleep with the door unlocked. That's what a family is. A few gasps came from the spectators. Some looked away. Others smiled faintly. The magistrate cleared his throat, uneasy. This proceeding is not about emotion. It is about structure. Then structure needs fixing, Aaron said quietly. He reached out and rested his hand lightly on Mina's shoulder. Not as a performance, but as proof. We followed the code. We gave shelter, respect, and choice. If that breaks the system, maybe the system needs breaking. The magistrate glared at him but didn't interrupt. He tapped his tablet once and lines of text filled the display behind him. The hearing room glowed with scrolling legal code. After a long pause, he said, This city has rules for a reason. Yes, Aaron said. To protect people, not to erase them. The words hung in the air. Sarah reached down, gently taking Mina's other hand. Cade lifted her chin, defiant. Eerie stood tall, the light from the ceiling reflecting in her pale eyes. For a heartbeat, even the magistrate didn't speak. He just looked at them, all of them, and saw something that didn't fit any regulation he'd ever read. Finally, he spoke. The assembly will deliberate, dismissed. Aaron nodded once. Then deliberate carefully, he said. Because what you decide today isn't about us, it's about whether this city still remembers what being human means. They turned and walked out together. Cameras followed their every step. Outside, the corridors of Glass Crown gleamed with artificial light, but to Aaron it felt like dawn. Behind him, the three women walked in silence, and Mina skipped between them, holding their hands. Whatever came next, he knew one thing. The system had finally been forced to look, and it would never be able to unsee them again. The next two. Days passed like the calm before a storm. Too still, too quiet to trust. No messages, no summons, no knock at the door. Only silence and the cold glow of the console still flashing, decision pending. On Glass Crown, silence meant danger. Decisions here were made by algorithms first, people second, and when the system took too long to answer, it usually meant someone was deciding how to make an example. Aaron barely slept. Every few hours he'd get up, check the console again, then stare out at the endless ocean spinning below the ring. The water looked calm from up here, but he knew what calm really meant. It meant pressure building beneath the surface. Sarah noticed his pacing before dawn. You'll wear a hole in the floor, she murmured from the cot. He smiled faintly. Wouldn't be the first time I've stood waiting for a verdict. Last time? She asked. Flood tribunal, he said. They had to decide whether to evacuate a town or save the turbines. They chose the turbines. Sarah frowned. And you? I chose people, he said simply. The quiet stretched between them, understanding, not sorrow. Cade emerged next, running a hand through her hair. Still no word? Nothing, Aaron said. Irie stepped out from the corner, her face calm but her eyes restless. They're stalling, she said. They want us scared. Aaron nodded. Then we don't give them that. He turned toward the window, watching the lights shift across the glass curve of the city. If they want a public example, we'll give them one worth remembering. By midday, the silence finally broke. A chime echoed through the room, 3 quick tones, then a pause. The words appeared on the wall screen in sharp, white letters. Final review assembly. Attendance required. All registered members present. Sarah read it aloud. Public again? Aaron nodded once. They're not hiding it this time. Cade cracked her knuckles. Then neither will we. Mina looked up from her drawing, her small voice trembling. Do we have to go? Yes, he said gently. But this time we don't go to defend, we go to show. She nodded, brave despite the fear behind her eyes. Then I'll wear my best. The assembly hall was colder this time. The upper balconies were full. Citizens, workers, officers, all gathered to watch. The air buzzed with curiosity, judgment, and something else. Doubt. The magistrate from before sat at the center of the dais. His expression was carved from stone. "Register Hale," he began. "You stand before this council once more. Your actions have drawn significant attention. The city demands clarity." Aaron stepped forward. "Then I'll give it." He didn't wait for permission. "You called this a violation. I call it survival. These women were marked for removal, discarded by a system that values order more than life. My daughter asked me why. I couldn't give her an answer. So I made one." His words echoed through the chamber. The crowd murmured, some angry, some uncertain. The magistrate raised a hand for silence. "You claim legality, yet you challenge the structure that built this city. Because structure means nothing without compassion," Aaron said. "You built walls in the sky to save humanity from the floods, but you forgot to bring the humans with you." A murmur rippled again, louder this time. The magistrate turned to the women. "And you three? Do you stand by this arrangement?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear. "Yes, because for the first time I am not property." Cade raised her chin. "Because he treats us like equals, not errors." Irie's tone was calm, but her words carried fire. "Because we chose this. No one else ever asked what we wanted." The magistrate's gaze shifted to Mina. "And the child?" Before anyone could stop her, Mina stepped forward. The hall went still. She looked up at the towering bench, unafraid. "They make me laugh," she said. "They make the house warm, and they don't make me feel alone. Isn't that what families do?" Even the magistrate blinked. The moment hung in silence. Then he turned to his screen, fingers tapping fast. Legal codes scrolled across the display behind him. Clause 7K, Welfare Amendment, Family Expansion Statute. After a long minute, he stopped. "This city," he said slowly, "was built to preserve order after chaos. But perhaps order has grown too narrow." He looked directly at Aaron. "Under the current law, your filings meet all structural requirements. However, the precedent you set will be controversial." Aaron nodded once. "Good. Change usually is." The magistrate hesitated, then pressed a single command on his panel. The hall lights shifted. A tone rang out. The display behind him glowed bright green. Status: approved. Household classification: permanent. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sarah covered her mouth with both hands. Irie exhaled sharply. Cade let out a low, disbelieving laugh. Mina cheered. Aaron stood motionless, letting the weight of it sink in. The magistrate's voice softened. "You've made history, Register Hale. Be wise with it." He nodded. "History belongs to everyone, sir. We just reminded it of that." The magistrate gave the faintest hint of a smile. "Then we're done here." When they stepped out into the open corridor, the world felt lighter. Mina ran ahead, laughing, her voice echoing down the steel hall. Sarah followed, tears shining on her cheeks. Irie held the approval envelope close like a fragile treasure. Cade clapped Iran on the shoulder, her voice rough but warm. "You did it, old man." He shook his head. "No, we did." The transit pod ride home was silent, but not heavy, peaceful. Outside the window, the city lights shimmered softer, less cold. Inside the small apartment, the door slid shut behind them with a final hiss that sounded like closure. Mina ran to her cot, clutching her stuffed gull. "We get to stay," she shouted. Sarah laughed through tears. "Yes, we do." Irie placed the official document on the table, its digital seal still glowing faintly. "Permanent," she whispered, as if testing whether the word was real. Cade poured cups of fruit tea, grinning. "To the strangest, strongest family in orbit." They raised their cups together. For the first time since the floods, Glass Crown felt less like a cage and more like a home. And for Aaron Hale, the man who defied silence for 6 credits and a promise, it felt like humanity had finally started to remember itself. Morning returned to Glass Crown, not with alarms or chimes this time, but with peace. For the first time in months, the console wasn't blinking red. The status light on the wall glowed a calm blue. Household, verified, permanent, Aaron Hale. Woke to the smell of something frying, a scent that felt foreign in this city of metal and filters. He sat up slowly, letting the quiet settle around him. For once, silence didn't mean danger. It meant safety. Sarah was at the stove, hair loose, wearing his gray jacket like a robe. She looked over her shoulder when she noticed him and smiled faintly. "You sleep like someone who finally ran out of battles." He rubbed his eyes. "Maybe I did." At the table, Mina sat cross-legged, helping Irie slice thin pieces of siren bread. Her laughter filled the small room. Cade leaned by the open vent, tightening a new filter she'd made from spare alloy strips. The sound of tools against metal was rhythmic, steady, comforting. For a moment, Aaron just stood there watching them. The women who had once been strangers. The child who'd asked for a mother and found 3. The home he'd built from nothing but defiance and hope. Sarah placed a plate in front of him. "Eat," she said, "before it gets cold." He smiled and sat down. The food was simple: fried reef meat, bread, and fruit syrup. It wasn't much, but it tasted real. It tasted earned. Cade poured him a cup of coffee. "You know," she said, "you're officially part of city history now." "I didn't do it for that," he replied. "I know," Cade said, smirking. "That's why it worked." Irie looked up from the table, her voice soft. "They'll talk about this. Some will hate it. Others will see it as hope." Aaron nodded. "Good. Let them talk. Change always starts as a rumor." Mina giggled. "We're famous?" Sarah laughed quietly. "Maybe a little." "Then can we have pancakes tomorrow?" Mina asked. Aaron looked at her, smiling. "We'll see what the budget says." Cade leaned back in her chair. The great revolutionary defeated by breakfast. Even Irie laughed at that. The sound filled the room, warm and light. Later that day, the inspectors came one final time, just 2, the same pair from before. Their knock was softer now, almost polite. Aaron opened the door without fear. "Register, Hale," the woman said, tablet in hand. "Final verification." "Of course," he said. "Come in." They stepped inside. The apartment was spotless but lived in. The smell of cooking still hung in the air. Sarah's bead belt hung beside the door. Cade's tools lined the wall neatly. Irie's curtains fluttered gently in the filtered breeze. Mina's drawings, 5 figures holding hands under a bright blue sun, covered the lower fridge panel. The male inspector smiled when he saw the picture. "She's talented. She's learning," Aaron said quietly. The woman nodded as she scanned the room. "You've kept regulations, maintained employment, and passed all follow-ups. No complaints registered. You're a first." Sarah stood near the table, hands clasped. "We're not trying to be an example," she said. "Just a home." "That's exactly why it worked," the inspector replied, tapping her tablet. A soft tone filled the air. The wall display flashed once, approved, permanently sealed household. Mina gasped, eyes wide. "We get to stay forever?" The woman smiled faintly. "Yes, little one." "You do," Cade laughed, a rough, joyful sound. Irie pressed a trembling hand to her lips. Sarah closed her eyes, whispering a silent thank you in her native tongue. Aaron simply stood there, letting the relief hit like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The male inspector handed him a digital envelope. "Official copy. Keep it visible in case of checks. Congratulations, Hale. You've changed more than you know." When the inspectors left, the door hissed shut behind them, sealing out the sterile hum of the city. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Mina threw her arms around Aaron's waist. "We did it!" she shouted. He laughed, a full, unguarded laugh that filled the tiny room. "Yeah, kiddo. We really did." Sarah joined them, wrapping an arm around both of them. Cade rested her hand on his shoulder. Irie placed the approval document on the wall and touched its glowing seal like it was a prayer. That night, they cooked a real meal, flatbread brushed with mushroom glaze, roasted reef steak and sweet fruit tea. They crowded around the small table, eating, talking, laughing. Mina smeared syrup on her cheek and Sarah wiped it away. Cade told a story about her dock days and Irie sang a quiet song from her world. It was messy, loud, human. When the dishes were done, Aaron stepped out onto the balcony. The ocean below shimmered in soft gold, reflecting the city's glow. He leaned on the cold railing, breathing in the faint scent of salt and metal. Sarah joined him, brushing her hand lightly against his arm. "What now?" she asked. He thought for a long moment. "We live," he said simply. "The way people should," she smiled. "You think Glass Crown will ever change?" He looked out at the endless blue horizon. It already has. Behind them, laughter drifted from the apartment. Mina was giggling as Cade tried to teach her how to use a wrench, while Irie hung a new curtain embroidered with the words, "Home belongs to the brave." The wind shifted, carrying their voices out into the night. Aaron closed his eyes for a moment and let himself breathe. Really breathe, for the first time since the floods. He had spent 6 credits, broken 3 laws and defied a world that had forgotten what family meant. And for that price, he had bought something priceless, not ownership, not obedience, but belonging. As the city lights shimmered across the sea, the camera of the moment would pull back, past the window, past the glowing ring of Glass Crown, until the small apartment became a single spark of warmth in a cold, perfect world, because sometimes in the vast silence of the stars, humanity's loudest victory is kindness.